All right, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and yeah, we'll start. I was kind of chuckling because I've got CNBC on, and they're talking about Bitcoin, and it must pain them to kind of talk about it because it just seems like a lot of them they don't look like they want to talk about it, but they kind of have to because this is what's going on. So this is, by the way, this is an ETF that's out there. It's a Swedish ETF. The gentleman over at Bloomberg, Eric Balchunas, I believe, is I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but he brought this to my attention. I think it was about a week ago. He mentioned that there is an ETF out there, and it's just not in the U.S. So, I think a lot of people are saying, well, if this happens, or if this happens, if futures happen, once the futures open, it's going to get crushed. I don't know if I believe that. I think. Yeah, maybe the volatility comes down a little bit, but there is an ETF out there. It does trade a lot of volume. So, it's traded 1.3 million shares. So it's not like nobody's trading this thing. People are trading it. So, yeah, I mean, futures are going to be something new. I mean, I'm honestly just going to be watching, I think, at that point and just kind of see what happens. But, I guess you can make your own prediction. But I think that there are players who are already, big players who are already in this. I don't know if futures are going to, if they're going to have that much of an impact, other than maybe stabilize it a little bit in terms of what's happening now with the price. But so that it is what it is. So last thing on the Bitcoin, and then we'll go over to today's market action. But I do have I'm the only one that I know of that has created a Bitcoin and blockchain. This is a cryptocurrency and blockchain ETF. You have to be a member to see the constituents, but as you can see, it's doing very well, and it got a little bit ahead of itself about 2 weeks ago, but it has not ramped up as much as what Bitcoin is doing. Keep in mind, it's a cryptocurrency. It's every company that's involved in cryptocurrency. So you could see, this is what, if you look at the last 6 months, but it's really interesting. So I've got 22 companies in there. I might add a couple companies into it, but yeah, this index is based on just any companies that are in blockchain, anything to do with cryptocurrencies themselves. So 22 companies. I'm the only one who's got that. There's a bunch of ETFs that are being listed, but I don't know what index they're tracking. I've got one. I'm the only one out there. If anybody has any questions about it, if you want to see it, you have to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group. You can certainly email me or just reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll give you access to it. But it's the only one out there. 22 companies in my cryptocurrency and blockchain equity index. So that's that. All right. So today's price action after the all of that stuff. Well, S&P futures up 30 basis points. We hit a little bit of resistance, I think, today. You have that purple line up there. Nothing really on the 1 hour bar, but a really nice day in terms of option activity. Just to give you an idea of the flow, I was saying in the first couple of hours of the day, whenever I have to lower or bring the font down small, because I like to fit all the big aggressive option trades on one page. And the last 2 days, you could see I've kind of kept the font the same. I even had space to put my logo up here, but that's how it was basically Tuesday and Wednesday. It just really got quiet as volatility picked up a little bit, and you could see, it kind of felt, I felt like for the first 2 hours, I was just trying to kind of catch up with all the action of the day. So I'm going to go over some of those trades and give you a couple names that closed really well, like I did yesterday. But before we do that, just to kind of, I've been talking about the VIX for the Qs the last couple days. When this gets heightened, right? This is, it's kind of risk off. And now look at the move down. Again, it's very different. If you're trafficking in tech names, the VIX is the wrong thing for you to look at. The VIX is for S&P, which also dropped pretty nicely all the way down to 10. As I mentioned in last night's video, I kind of thought that we would do this. I said I really didn't want to make a prediction, but I kind of thought that the volatility would be coming in a little bit. Sure did in the VIX. But if you're trading a lot of tech names, semiconductor names, software names. What you want to watch is this VXN, and the volatility has really been heightened the last couple of days, which is what I've been talking about. And I said this thing really had to get below, first of all, this white line, which price was above for a while, and it kind of oscillated here back and forth before finally today it started to take a dive. It perked up a little bit in the afternoon, and then you could see at the end of the day, I did have an alert set at 1650, which I think was the first hurdle that we needed to drop below, and then 16. So what does this tell us? Why am I looking at this? Because it means that again, the VIX is not. People call it the fear index. It doesn't. That's not what it measures. It measures short-term volatility. Now, people associate volatility with fear, but that's really not the right way to it's not what it does. It measures the expectations of short-term volatility. So when that's high, as we're watching this VXN back up here, you know, there's a higher than expected volatility that's present, or at least higher than expected versus the average. So once this thing starts to really dip down, it becomes more of what we've seen for the rest of 2017, basically a stock picker's market, right? Once the market is not expecting that volatility anymore, then things become a lot more calmer, correlations drop, and it goes back to what we've seen for the rest of the year. But for me, it's kind of hands off. And so while volatility is climbing, it's not a great place because you just don't know how further volatility is going to climb. But once we started to see, at least it started to turn down, that's my indicator to kind of start to add positions. And that's when we're basically, we get out of the woods in terms of the danger zone. All right, so that's what we did earlier in the week. Positions that I added to or put on this week was Alibaba, which saw some nice call buying today. I'll kind of start there with option activity. So Alibaba, really big trade. We've been seeing kind of not straight call buying. Been seeing a little bit of put buying as well. But today, you can see this trade was swept today. This was 7,000 of the April 200 calls. I don't think it was against stock. Usually, when something usually that big goes up, it has a chance that it might be against stock. I have to double check one more time. But even if it is, it's still a big trade that could be, is a sizable position. So BABA's still underneath the 50-day moving average. It needs to reclaim that. It did reclaim the 100-day moving average. So, we've seen this before. Shack, by the way, a really nice chart too. I could go over that one as well, but really nice base in that name. I just messed this up, but that's okay. But yeah, so it reclaimed the 100-day moving average. So now if you're in this, like I am, now that it's reclaimed the 100-day moving average, what you want to do is be very cognizant of that, because notice it's got a long way to really get down to the 200-day moving average. If it breaks back below, I would say abandon the trade because it's going to be a mess underneath that 100-day moving average. But it reclaimed it. Let's see what it can do now. And that was the story, like one by one. I've mentioned a couple times this week in the video that a lot of these tech charts, they kind of look the same. Some look a little bit better than others. Micron had a nice day today. That one we saw a lot of call buying in today. Notice it's closed above the 50-day moving average. A really nice close. And you can see it's still moving up. It actually just took that VPOC out, or almost took this VPOC out. Again, the way these purple lines work is they're like magnets, basically. Price will gravitate to them, and then sometimes we see a little bit of a trail off. Like, for example, Tesla. Tesla today, that's close enough to this being taken out, but Tesla hit it and reverted. So it doesn't always work like that. But they could be a little bit dangerous. That's why for me, I want to take targets if I'm in trades and I see this taken out, because it could be a little bit scary when things just revert like that. Again, doesn't happen every time we touch one of those, but be mindful of that. Facebook, another name that some members traded today, up 2.3%. And look at this thing. Really nice recovery, just quietly recovered. Visa, another name that we've seen continuous call buying in, almost back to where this sell-off started. So really nice move. One, two, just took 3 days for it to retrace that big ugly candle that it had. One here, and then a couple here. So it's not all the way back, but still a nice retracement if you bought the dip in this particular name. Some other names to go through. So basically everything that I've added to CRM. That's a trade that we took earlier in the week when we saw again just really nice clue to see the repeat call buying after it reported earnings. They bought here. They were wrong for a little while, but they kept on buying, which got me into a trade, and real nice from those. So I've taken a couple targets in that one. What else did I take targets in today? Lumber Liquidators, first target in this swing trade that I put on 2 days ago. Closed on the highs. It needs to keep going here, but nice bounce on the 200-day moving average. I feel like I'm missing a couple names. Take Two, also nice bounce. Didn't close on the highs, but still continued to bounce pretty nicely. Applied Materials, they bought calls 2 days ago in AMAT. I'm not sure that this one actually looked like it was a little bit weak midday, but real nice call buyer 2 days ago. They may have sold a little bit of those calls that they bought a couple days ago in the afternoon. I'll have to check open interest, but in the morning they did buy more today. But that was a hell of a signal 2 days ago. And then just a couple different things. FCX, real nice aggressive trade. I took this trade. I took a portion of it off, but up 3.4% today. For FCX, I've tried FCX actually a few times in option activity. It really it has to be a really good signal for me to get in FCX because it's just a choppy name. I can't bring this up in Thinkorswim for whatever reason, as it's hesitating. But here was the trade. Was this short-term trade? 25,000 of these that were bought for I think in the 20s. I don't have the price on there, but right around 20 cents. I think around 25 cents. So really nice aggressive trade in FCX. A bunch of us took that in the trading room today. I got in for 28 cents. I took a target at 35 cents. So like a 20% profits right away, and it closed on the highs, or pretty darn near close to it. Another name that we saw, just not tech. Kind of go over some non-tech names. YRCW, real nice. Look at the 4.8% in this name. Some calls went up right in the beginning of the day. Also to kind of stick with non-tech names, UPS, which didn't really react too much. Saw some call buying a couple times today. Also Square. Saw some weeklies go up for in the beginning of the day, and then also for tomorrow. Some 20-cent calls were purchased for tomorrow's expiration. Keep an eye on that name tomorrow. Looks like it's bouncing a little bit in the after hours. Another tech name, EA. So some calls that expire tomorrow. Also saw some next week's calls. Electronic Arts does make the Star Wars game, which I know they've been under some heat for some of their games, but they did see some call buying. This one's still below the 200-day moving average, looks challenged, but let's see what it can do. I'm in this name. I'm in a June position. I don't usually take names that are underneath the 200-day moving average, but they just keep coming in with calls. So, as long as they do that, I'll stay in the trade. Speaking of another name that's been seeing call buying, Comcast. Again, I can't bring up, looks like Trade Alert is down for whatever reason. But, they bought calls all in here, right? And it's a good example. Sometimes it just takes a long time before the call buying actually works, or the name actually pops. Sometimes it's literally a couple months. Nothing happens in a name, and then all of a sudden it pops on a story. Which is what Comcast did. So if you remember last week, I was in Comcast. I made some money in it because they bought a ton of weeklies as well. They did, I think this was Friday, 12/1. They actually rolled the weekly position to January. Now it's been moving down, and it's been really getting shelled the last couple days. But they went in a couple times and they bought calls right into this mess of down 2%. So I did take a little trade in that one as well because it's worked pretty well as long as you have some patience, because sometimes it just doesn't work right away. IGT, another name. I really like this chart. This is International Game Technology. One of the best names that we've seen aggressive option activity in. Notice where this chart is now. So we've seen calls even below the 200-day moving average in this name. It's made it all the way through. It had earnings, big pop, nice follow through on earnings, but it's been in digestion mode. So where has it come into? The 20-day moving average, right into some support. Needs to get over 2790. But I think it looks promising here as long as it holds that 20-day moving average. Couple other trades. Again, you could see just as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, that a big number of trades. FTC was a nice block. This name is underneath the 200-day moving average, so I did not take it. Was tempted. They bought leaps in this one. A couple other names: AG, KMB, which stalled. Again, no reason for me to really take this trade. KMB, out of this this downward channel, but it rose right up to the 200-day moving average and failed. So if it happens to retake it, then it could be, I think, interesting. But I don't like how it failed right at that 200-day moving average. A couple other names, and then I want to talk about one or two. I mentioned UPS already. EMR, aggressive call buyer in that name, and then aggressive call buyer in the last minute or two of the day in 5. Let's just take a look at this chart. Yeah, pretty nice move. Nice move after earnings as well. They had good earnings, and they've been off and running, this particular name. So a couple other things to notice. What I noticed like midday, which is, the market kind of gave back some of those gains midday. But you look at what happened with bonds today, and this also falls in line with today's option activity. But big move down in bonds today. Notice that this chart, let me just take a step back here for a minute. Again, it's not, a head and shoulders pattern is usually after a big run up, but look, it kind of looks like a left shoulder, head, and possibly a right shoulder. Notice whenever we get to this level, we get some of these long tails, but look at the trade that went up to, I don't know if I can bring it up. So TBT, it worked. TBT, which is inverse bonds. So it's the opposite of, if you look at TLT, which is the long bond ETF, it's the inverse of this. So they bought calls in this, and look at what this thing did today. So I don't really like to chart inverse leveraged ETFs, but look at the move here. Pretty nice move. Big play on bonds, $430,000. They're buying calls in TBT. They think TLT will go down, meaning interest rates go up. So it's a play on interest rates. They think interest rates will go up. Really interesting to see that move in bonds. TLT down 80 basis points. And just to kind of give you a little visual, you could see that this basically happened in the afternoon, right around 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, just really sold off hard. Oh, I always take note of that. And what does well when interest rates go up? Banks, excuse me. So nice regional bank ETF call buyer, and that's probably the last one that we'll talk about. A couple trades went up. This one was a spread, but these look like they were purchased outright. December 29th. I don't know, maybe Santa Claus rally could be that they're positioning for. Who knows? The other thing to mention, the last note to mention, look what happened to gold today. Smoked, down 1.3%. So all these kind of things like the VIX moving down, bonds moving down, gold moving down, usually is not a bad sign for equities when all these risk off areas go down. It's usually a pretty good sign. Silver actually led gold the last couple days and has been moving down pretty hard. We did see one call buyer in that space, maybe taking advantage of maybe a dip buyer coming in. I think it was AG. So anyway, that's a little bit longer than normal video for today, but there's a lot going on. So thanks for watching. Have a great night. See you tomorrow, bright and early Friday morning. Thank you.